Hello, I'm Heather from the East Africa Internship Program and Queen Elizabeth Scholars. I recently spent some time in Tanzania in Dar es Salaam with my colleagues here, thanks to Sherry. And I just want to talk to you a little bit about experiential learning actually and its benefits, because I think that is like one of the main reasons you should go to university is to have an experiential learning situation. So, pretty much any learning by doing is experiential learning. So practicums, internship, lab work, anything like that. And an internship is an amazing benefit to have on your resume. As Anisha said in the video, like it's getting really competitive these days. Everyone and their dog has a bachelor's degree. There are actually 3 dogs that have bachelor's degrees and 1 as a graduate. So it's competitive, and you know that it's not guaranteed that you'll find work after this. So if you have experience in the field, which is what this type of program offers you, hugely beneficial. Not to mention, millennials, as I think most of us in university right now are like allergic to boredom, and we spend like 1,800 hours in lectures. Writing essays is another however many thousand on top of that. So it can get a little bit grating, a little bit monotonous. So spending 3 months abroad especially is a fantastic opportunity. You can broaden your horizons, interact with foreign populations and the locals. Yeah, I think that might actually be all I have to say. Experiential learning is amazing and beneficial, and you should definitely take advantage of the programs that we offer here. It's 2016, you have a choice now in how you learn. You can choose the institution that works for you and offers you what you need. So yeah, take advantage of every opportunity.
Hi everyone, I'm Sheena. I'm just going to talk a little bit about the cultural differences I experienced with my time in Tanzania. Speaking of time, actually that's my first point. Everything runs a little bit slower in Tanzania, we found, and everything's a little bit more relaxed. So an example of this is when I first joined a gym in Tanzania, and I went to go do a class at 6:30 in the morning. So I was a little bit late, about 2 minutes, and I showed up there and I got to the classroom and no one was there. So I went and I talked to the front desk and they said the class would be starting momentarily. So about 25 minutes later, the class started. There was another example when the interns wanted to go to a barbecue meat festival. This festival started at 12 o'clock in the afternoon, so we decided to be fashionably late and we left at 2 o'clock, arriving shortly after. We were the only ones there besides the vendors. So it was just us, just the Mzungos or the Westerners there, and just the vendors. It turns out that we were thinking we were 2 hours late, but we were actually 4 hours early. No one else arrived until about 6 o'clock that night. That's when everything started to get going. This is also evident in the restaurants and the traffic in Dar es Salaam. So as far as the traffic goes, from where we were living, it should have been about a 20-minute ride to downtown. This would normally take over an hour. The traffic was a little bit crazy and hectic there, change of pace for us. And then also with restaurants, we would oftentimes wait about an hour to get our food. So it was a bit of an adjustment, but it was also nice to see a laid-back, more relaxed culture. Another thing that I noted when I was there was religion was a little bit more prominent that I saw. So Tanzania is mainly made up of Muslims, Christians, and then indigenous religions. The indigenous religions were more prominent in the rural areas of Tanzania, where you would oftentimes see people wearing necklaces or something to protect them from spirits, which they would have gotten from a witch doctor. We also noted in Zanzibar, which is 98 to 99% Muslim, that just before Ramadan and even in Dar es Salaam during Ramadan, everything kind of shuts down during the day. There's not as many vendors or places to eat because the Muslims are fasting at that time. So we also had to be aware that we weren't eating or drinking in public just because we wanted to be super respectful to everyone around us. We also had to make sure everyone there was very modestly dressed, so we wanted to make sure our shoulders were covered, our knees were covered, so just to be respectful to religion there. Another thing that we noted that was kind of interesting is that some Tanzanians wear a conga, which is a type of skirt that ladies would wear, and this is also a form of communication to some people. So when it was described to us, say there's a dispute between 2 ladies in a neighborhood, and they, instead of going directly up to the other lady to talk about the dispute, she may go to the store and buy a new conga. Now these congas have a sentence at the bottom, and when we read one, it was roughly translated to, "Say it to my face." So the lady would go to the store, buy a new conga, put the conga on, and then just walk by someone else so she could read the saying on her conga and communicate her point to her. So we thought that was kind of interesting. Another thing we noted that was a little bit different was the sense of community over there and really the type of greeting styles that they have. So this may have been derived from the previous socialist government they used to have, where they kind of work together as a community. But also when you're just walking down the street, everyone would always kind of just go a mambo, which means, hi, how are you? And then you'd always respond with poa, which is fine, thank you. That was kind of interesting to see, as well as everyone also normally refers to you as brother or sister, which just kind of makes you feel a little bit more welcomed. And another thing that we noted was greetings to elders and respect towards elders. So if you were meeting an elder for the first time, or even the first time you saw them during the day, you'd say shikamo, which essentially translates to like, I kiss your feet. And then they would respond with marahaba, which is, yes, you kiss my feet, thank you. So we found that interesting as well. So those are the major cultural differences and a little bit different lifestyle that we really appreciated learning on the East Africa Internship Program.
My name's Amanda, and while in Dar es Salaam, I had the opportunity to work on a project about child-friendly environments. It was a project that advocated for the creation of child-friendly public spaces, specifically in the developing city of Dar es Salaam. And it was a really interesting project, something that I've still been thinking about even as I've come home and come to realize the significance of it, even more as I've come back to Canada. In researching the project, I was able to explore ideas both of placemaking and of community, and I was able to look at the ways in which these things form a person's childhood. Of course, we all know childhood is a formative time in a person's life. You look back at your childhood, and there's probably some things that you remember, and you probably note that something of the person you are today was impacted by your childhood to some extent. So the thing that we were specifically looking at was the impact on childhood as cities develop. So in less developed countries, children have specific play areas, specific areas where they experience community, where they grow as kids, and just generally a place they can identify with. And the thing that I was specifically looking at was what happens when that area is developed, and how can we work to preserve the areas where children can identify, where they can work, where they can build community, and they can just generally be kids. Two such places we considered were like playgrounds and green spaces, and places just where children, again, can connect, and where adults can connect as well. So of course my point here is not that development is entirely a positive thing. I know that's a contentious sort of thing, something we explored a little bit. This is just an expression of my experiences in Dar es Salaam. But the main thing that I think I learned through this experience was that as we develop, there are sometimes things that we have the potential to leave behind. Community may be one of those things. In Tanzania, we noted that the locals have a very strong sense of community. As we went through various areas in Tanzania, we saw people building community, people who were just generally supporting each other and eager to see each other. Basically, whenever they had a spare moment, it was communal time, which is a stark contrast to say what we see here in North America. We don't see that as much. People go home, people go, some people are more social than others, of course, but a lot of people just stay in their own little area by themselves, or take alone time, as we call it. So it was really interesting to see how some values can be sidelined as we develop. So my takeaway from this is basically, if we're going to be involved in the development of other countries, I found it really significant that we need to be both careful and respectful of the values that we might be stepping on, and try to pull from those and make sure that we preserve those in any sorts of supposed developments in foreign countries. It was a beautiful time in Tanzania, beautiful people, beautiful place, and I feel really fortunate to have been able to participate in the studies that we undertook there. It was definitely memorable, and I think I learned a lot through the experience. Thanks.
Hi everybody, my name's Tyler. When I found out that I was going to go on this internship, I had one goal in mind. I had one plan as to what I was wanting to get out of the internship. And that was pretty simply, I wanted to understand a different culture, to get a different perspective on life that I was unfamiliar with. And in a certain extent, by the end of it, I actually kind of accomplished that goal, but not at all how I was expecting to accomplish it. And I'll explain what I mean. As a business major going on an internship with the geography department, learning about food systems in Africa, I felt particularly underqualified. So the first month of our time spent there was primarily just researching things. We were spending a lot of time on the computer, a lot of time talking to locals and saying, what makes Tanzania Tanzania? And after a month or so, I feel like I had a certain degree of success in that because, I could maintain a reasonable level of conversation with other academics that were at the same guest house as us. I could spout off statistics like Tanzania has a GDP of approximately $1,700 or $3,000 US dollars per capita, depending on where you get your stats. 80 to 88% of the labor market is taken up in the agricultural industry. And with that huge part of the labor market, they only produce 20% of the GDP. I could spout off these stats, but something just felt a little bit weird to me. Like I just felt like it would be presumptuous for me to say anything definitive about the Tanzanian culture. And that's kind of why we were there. We were there to write a report. We were there to research food systems. And we were there to present some sort of observation. And I just didn't feel right about it. And then we met a family there, the Plakis, and they were from rural Tanzania, originally from Texas. And they ran an NGO providing clean water and water filtration systems to locals in a little town called Liwale. And when I chatted with them, they knew all the same stats I did. We could have that same conversation about what makes Tanzania Tanzania, but there was something a little bit different about how they spoke. And when I went to visit them, we all got a chance to visit them in their house down in the south. And when we visited them, it made sense to me what was different. First off, they'd been there for 8 years and I'd been there for 2 months, so that's an initial difference. But the way that they lived in Tanzania was with the people in their neighborhood. They were neighbors in the truest sense, in the Tanzanian sense. While we were there for a week, their neighbors would come over, and Becky, the mom and wife of the family, she would give them medicine. She would teach them how to read English and speak English. And Scott would be spending his whole day working with 10 to 15 Tanzanian men, digging wells and all of that. And what I found to be very particularly different between their experience and mine was that they knew the Tanzanian people in a way that was really true. And what I mean by that is I read a book recently by an author named Sheena Walper. And in the book, he discusses the difference between knowing somebody and knowing about somebody. And now, I knew about the Tanzanian people, but J.I. Packer says that until the things that make someone else happy make you happy, or until the things that make someone else sad make you sad, you don't truly know them. And that was the major distinction between how I felt that I knew the Tanzanian people and how I felt that Scott and Becky knew them. And why this is important is that Amanda alluded to it, that development as an industry, the merits of it are contentious right now, and I think it ultimately comes down to how we approach it. Now, if I were to go over to Tanzania and approach it from behind my computer, trying to learn about what makes Tanzania Tanzania, I think I would be doing way more harm than good. But if I were to approach it the way the Plakis did, by integrating myself with my community and being neighbors to the people that I'm trying to help and be a part of, then I think true change can actually happen. So that was my personal experience, and I'm very grateful for the time that I did have in Tanzania, and it has for sure shaped my perspectives, just like I set out to do.